Hi everyone and welcome back to A Mad Belgian, a podcast about this mad world and how it makes people, me included, increasingly mad. A weekly mix of stories, news and encounters broadcasted to you from a fairly big room in a very tiny country. Hope you enjoy it! Last week's first ever episode of the show got a lot of positive response, which is great, and one very aggressive, angry Facebook comment that read, "I managed 1 minute of that, so boring, I would pay on Patreon for her to fucking shut up." Oh, these subtle debates we have on Facebook. Anyway, that person did not in the end decide to pay me to shut up, so I guess I'll just keep talking for a while. This week's random encounter was on a train to the delightful city of Antwerp. I met a Belgo-Moroccan chef who happened to have the same name as my dad, which led us into a 10-minute discussion in which he told me about, well, everything. His current work, the loss of his parents 3 and 7 years ago, his siblings who all have flourishing businesses in Morocco, and his lifelong dream of moving to Quebec to open a restaurant of his own. Fascinating how open people actually are when you are truly interested in their story. The encounter made my day. He also happened to be reading the strangest magazine, Faits Divers, that covered the most dark and surreal stories. A few articles caught my eye, amongst which a title that read, "She stabbed him because he ate the last chip." A typically Belgian tragedy, isn't it? Both plain ridiculous and involving fries. Boy, do I wish I had had the chance to read the full article, just for research, about human madness and Belgian traditions. Anyway, I also had a bit of a roller coaster week. I felt like I was living in a film this week, which would be exciting if it didn't feel like the director kept changing his mind about the style of the movie. So my Monday, for example, was an art house film, weird, rainy and slightly unsettling. Tuesday was a romantic drama. Wednesday a comedy, clearly. I even went to a comedy show in the evening. Thursday was a musical. I kept finding myself singing and dancing all day, cycling across town, waiting for the bus, etc, etc. And Friday, well, I ran all over the place to complete missions, fix my aunt's computer, get my bike to the repair shop. How exciting is the life I lead? So I guess Friday felt more like an adventure film. Bloody exhausting to switch genres so often, if you ask me. I would quite like to stay in rom-com mode for a little while, just to see how that feels. Anyway, in the last episode I read you a poem. Well, I'll end this episode of A Mad Belgian with a song I wrote about our relationship to sound.
Sound, safe and sound, safe and sound. I only feel safe when there's sound around. I only feel safe, sound, safe and sound, safe and sound. It makes me feel less lonely, which is why I always leave the radio on and listen on and on and on and on.
To the news, and some terrible commercial, to more news, and a few pop rock mega hits, to more news, then a comedy show, then back to news. But it is all bad news, awful news. News of blood, devastation, death, war, and horror. And it is all bad news, awful news. And it is so scary. It makes me feel lonely. It makes me feel weary of others. And it is so scary. The world's too much for me, and I will never again leave the house. I crave some silence, but I need sound. Safe and sound, safe and sound. I only feel safe when there's sound around. This closes this edition of A Mad Belgian. If you'd like to comment on the podcast, do send me an email at amadbelgian@gmail.com. I love receiving them. Thank you for listening, and until next time. That's it. If you've enjoyed this show, please share it on Twitter and Facebook. You'll also find more stories, reflections and poems on my blog, www.amadbelgian.org. And if you really enjoyed it, well, please support me on Patreon, a wonderful website who enables you to support the show and the blog by donating anything from $1 a month to the project. Now, $1 might not sound like much, but think about it. If everyone who's watched the first edition of the show gave it $1, I could turn it into a proper show, do slightly longer episodes or do them more frequently, get a proper camera, spend more time researching stories and editing the footage to make it more lively and interesting, do interviews. Point being, even the smallest donation makes a difference. So please do help me keep this project going and growing. A big thanks already to Fabrice and Christian, who did me the great honor of becoming my first ever patrons. Thank you so much. Have a great week, everyone, and see you next week for A Mad Belgian.